Hi, everybody. Welcome to another 30 minutes of the Worldview. I'm Chris Greco, your host for this half-hour long look at different countries in different situations and how it affects us in the United States. So today we're going to be covering is Saudi Arabia aligns with Iran. Now, the problem with this is that this right here, Saudi Arabia aligns with Iran, is like covered like this much in the U.S. media. And I'm going to do an endorsement here. Haystack News. Haystack News, free on Roku. It is fantastic. It gives all kind of different international looks. Yes, you can get local news, but to tell the honest God truth, I don't even look at that stuff. France 24, CBC, BBC, name it, Al Jazeera. They are all on there, and they give an international view of what's going on in the world. That's what we need, folks. I could give a hoot in heck what happens at the Academy Awards. I could care less about, hairstyles or rock groups or whatever, because let me tell you something, that means very, very little in this worldview. What we're talking about is countries that are going to have an impact on the United States. And this one today, this episode today, Saudi Arabia aligns with Iran, with China in the middle. This is the second or third show that I've covered that has China in it. This is getting to be a real, honest to goodness, no kidding threat. Xi Jinping just entered his third term as undisputed premier of the communist, basically the communist head honcho of communist China. I mean, we're talking about a dictator here, folks. We're talking about an individual that dresses up in suits and ties, all nicey. But the bottom line is that this country the one thing he did state in his area of expertise as a premier of China was that we're talking about a strong military force. He wants to have a stronger military force. What does that mean? More military spending. Where are they going to get the money? Well, let's go into that. So let's understand why we're talking about China. What is happening here? Saudi Arabia and Iran just sat down with China as the mediator. This is interesting now. We have to take a look at this to patch up their differences after decades of silence. They had all kind of interesting aspects, specifically Yemen, where Iran was providing a lot of money, people, whatever you want to call it, for the insurrection there in Yemen. And it was causing problems with Saudi Arabia. And I think it's important to note, and let's just do that for a second here. Let's just talk about what we're talking about with geography, because I think a lot of people do not realize exactly what's going on in the geographical area. So we're going to actually make that. We're going to take a look at that, and we're going to see about this from the Google Earth perspective. So let's take a look at Saudi Arabia here. Now, this is called the Saudi Arabian Peninsula here. And so this is interesting because you have basically the Persian Gulf here, the Gulf of Oman here, and here you have Iran. And here's Saudi Arabia. And here, folks, is Oman and Yemen. So all this is part of basically the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, this peninsula area here. You have Jordan, then up here, then you have Israel. So now you go into the Mideast, right? So and remember, Iraq, we had a lot of troops right along this borderline here in Saudi Arabia, because when Iraq went into Kuwait and took Kuwait, we had to drive them out of there. We had to do that by making sure that Iraq couldn't put any of their troops into that area. So there are a lot of troops, 100,000 troops right along this border area here. So now we're having an issue with Qatar, because Qatar, there was just recently a ship that was, I think it was about 6 months ago or so, a ship that was in the Persian Gulf actually was fired upon, and they're thinking it was from Iran. So this alignment between Saudi Arabia and Iran is very important, and that will help to hopefully quell a lot of anxiety and angst between these two countries. So that's pretty much it with that. So that's what's going on, and China happens to sit down with that. China is putting their foot in a lot of different pools. One, they're putting their foot in Africa. Two, they're putting their foot in the. Whoop, let me see if I can get this here. Sorry. So basically, they're putting their foot in Africa. They're putting their foot in the Mid East. They're putting their foot. They have a lot of little. Let's get you people in this. Let's get you people in there. We're gonna cover the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which we did in the prior show, but I think it's we need to refresh that. So we're going to refresh that here in a second, but I want to go over this first. So negotiated bilateral relations negotiated in Beijing, the capital of communist China. So interestingly enough, both the Saudis and the Iranians, and by the way, Iran, what they speak is Farsi, but basically they're Persian. So we're talking about Persia here, right? They when we talk about Mid East, we always include Iran in that, but that's not really true, folks. It's Iran is actually more southwest to West Asia area, but we'll get into that. Al Jazeera report on this. Good, very good. Here's your link right here. Al Jazeera does a great job of reporting this stuff, especially international aspects. I highly urge people to go to the site and take a look at this. Take a look at this this story. So again, hasn't been reported on heavily, if at all, from the U.S. media. I mean, heaven forbid we should be talking about anything but internal strife within our country, not the external aspect of the world, but hey, we got to fix what's happening here in this country, because of course that's all it's all encompassing. I mean, more interested in the Academy Awards than the impact on this world situation. So how does this affect me? And that's what you're asking. How, okay, Chris, this is real nice, but how does it affect me personally, right? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now I have this, and this is actually wrong. It does not have Saudi and Iran as the potential members. It has Iran as the potential members. Saudi Arabia, I have no doubt that sooner or later Saudi Arabia is going to kind of join this. And I'll tell you why they're probably pulling back at this point is because, and let me just fix this because I think this is really important, is that it does not have Saudi, it has Iran, right? So I think that's important. Saudi, I think it's potential, right? Potential members. And I think this is important because when we talk about this stuff, we talk about, potential membership. If I were the Chinese, I would be pushing very hard for Saudi Arabia to join the SCO. Why? Because they're an oil producer, just like Iran is. So now you have two major oil producers in a bilateral relationship. This is a big deal. So originally OPEC, right, the oil producing and exporting countries, were formed with Saudi and Iran and all the other OPEC countries, and they started to basically price gouge all Western countries with their oil. Originally, I mean, I can remember as a kid, as a very, very young kid, where gasoline at one point, we had a gas war, and this was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We had a gas war, and gas actually went down to a dime a gallon. Now, people are going to sit there and say, no, it didn't. Yes, it did. I worked at a gas station. I set the prices. The price went down to a dime a gallon. That's how cheap oil was at that point in time. OPEC came into play in the 1970s, and all of a sudden we had gasoline shortages. So that's what happened with that. So now the U.S. is producing their own oil. OPEC found itself outside of the monopoly, and that's where you have these issues. Where Saudi Arabia, and I realized that our president went to Saudi Arabia at one point and asked them to produce more oil. And I think what's happening is now is, we don't have a really good relationship with Iran at this point in time. Iran and Saudi Arabia are now aligned. They now have diplomatic, they're switching ambassadors. They're doing all this stuff to get diplomatic relations up. Um, this could be a problem with Saudi Arabia. Are they going to do the U.S.'s bidding? I doubt very much, especially if they have somebody like China and Iran on their side, right? So China needs oil to continue manufacturing, lots of manufacturing, including weapons. So they're the go-between between those two major oil producers. So this means that China will become stronger in the energy marketplace and have more means to get the energy that they need, or even get the energy and then export that energy to other areas, or use the energy to be able to do what they need to do to be a stronger country. And I went through all this. Yeah, but how does this affect me? How does this affect me? Okay, the U.S. is starting to drill and refine their own oil. Now, the controversial Willow project is online, and look that up. It's in Alaska. They're talking about about 600 million barrels in over a period of time, which is interesting because that's just one area. We produce a lot of barrels of oil, right? So, however, China's trying to corner the energy market through the SCO. So they brought Iran in, and pretty soon they're going to bring Saudi Arabia in. And, people are going to sit back and go, yeah, but Chris, when you go over the SCO, Saudi Arabia is not part of the SCO. Not yet. Not yet. But they will be. And some of our allies are now part of the SCO. So, India, for one. It's funny because India and Pakistan are part, they're trying to get into the SCO. So now you have two countries that really don't like each other, India and Pakistan, and they're both nuclear powers that are now going to start getting into the SCO. So, we're talking about they're going to corner that energy market. It could be problematic for Europe and East Asia, right? Japan, for one, but it could also extend into our friends in Australia. Australia imports their oil. They're a very, very small energy producer, very small, but they use a lot of oil. They get some of their oil imports from China. So what's gonna happen with that relationship, that energy import, right? So China's going to build their reserves. They're going to commandeer the SCO members' monetary resources. Now we covered that last week, and we'll cover that again. This could mean the U.S. will be more isolated, and we'll have to, depend on ourselves for a lot of things, which we should do anyways, to tell the truth, in my opinion. So, again, how does this affect me in the United States? China taking over the energy resources for much of the world, they could set energy prices to get revenue. This means that they might share this revenue with other SCO member countries, which we'll talk about. It will also affect the oil prices in the U.S. and raise the price of oil. They could actually raise the price of oil, or they could lower it to the point where they're the cheapest, and then we have to lower our price to be able to cover that if we're exporting oil. This could affect you at the pump. Either way, it could affect you as the pump, costing you more money. The electricity to provide power to electric cars would have to come from oil and coal plants, mainly coal plants, but there are other fossil fuels that do power electricity. Now, this will affect the United States in the world marketplace, with China taking over the helm of the energy production and sales. China's goal is to commandeer as much infrastructure as possible that either affects the target nation, or it affects those nations that are peripherally associated with that target nation. That's what they do. They're doing it now in Africa. And it's very evident they're doing it in other areas. So China has Middle Eastern oil. So what? Well, China is also making headway into Africa. Africa has a lot of oil and natural gas, and Russia is going in there to try to get some, and China's in there trying to get some, and evidently, the Chinese want to do this so badly, they're actually teaming up with France. They're teaming up with France to fund a pipeline from Uganda oil drilling to Tanzania ports. I addressed that in the last video when I talked about that. And France is, I don't know, unaligned, not aligned. I don't know. I don't think they care. They don't care who they deal with, just so long as, hey, look, we can get our oil, because France right now needs oil, and they're going to all kind of places to try to get this oil. They even went to Algeria, where in the 19 in the 19 from 1950 to 1960 something. I mean, they had an Algerian war of which the French really did some atrocities against the Algerian people that President Macron has apologized for. But these atrocities were, I mean, women, children they just killed them. I mean, it was, torture, kill. It was a horrible situation. But so Algeria said, no, no, thanks. We're not going to do that. So they're going to other African countries to try to gauge up get some oil out of that situation. So China gets a foothold in the oil reserves in Africa, along with the Middle East and Persia. They could hold the U.S. hostage in oil. We have to be able to self-sustain oil. We have to be a self-sustaining oil country. That's what we have to do. Venezuela's there. They're in a lot of chaos right now, and we'll talk about that on a future show. Remember, we export oil. If countries do not need our oil, this would raise the price of oil here. So, I mean, just see, I'm not an economist, but I am a customer, and I've seen oil go up and down and up and down and up and down. And, releasing reserves somehow helps that situation. I don't know how it does, but basically it's supposed to. So there's all kind of situations there that we have to take into consideration where we're talking about this. So the future would look grim unless we do something now to prevent the Chinese. So what do? We must make headway into Africa, not to take over a country, but to help the Africans self-govern. This is where I've seen it personally, that we tend to give money to an African country to maintain some type of infrastructure there. Well, the problem is that money, nobody knows where that money goes. It's supposed to go to the people, but I've seen us give millions of dollars to African countries, and the people are still poor. I mean, millions of dollars. There's no way that people should be living in shanties, but that they do, because the money is absconded, or from corrupt government or whatever else, and all of a sudden, there's an issue there. So that's what we need. We've been silent on Africa. I mean, I'll say it again, and I will say it again, and I will say it again. Why is African Command headquarters in Germany? Why is it in Europe? It should be in Africa. If that's where our area is of responsibility, that's where we should have our headquarters, in Africa. And I think it's embarrassing. It's humiliating to me as a veteran in an intelligence area to have a situation where you have EUCOM is in Europe. PACOM is in the Pacific. Now I realize that PACOM is in Hawaii, okay? But at least it's in the Pacific. At least it's there in the middle of the Pacific. I mean, SouthCom, again, United States, but it's at least as close to South America. So you have situations where you got CENTCOM. CENTCOM headquarters is sitting here in the United States. Why? Why is CENTCOM here in the United States? It's responsible for Mideast and Southwest Asia and all that. Why is it sitting there? So I have some issues with that. I'm sure people smarter than me in the Department of Defense, because they're all smarter than me, probably in the Department of Defense, according to them. So it's why don't we have these headquarters sitting in that country? I don't know, or countries. I don't know. I don't understand it. But AFRICOM, you're right there. You're literally right there. Just ship it on down to Africa. We have bases there already. We have a couple of bases. Just put it at a base, and it can double as a headquarters. But no. And why is that? Because we've been silent on Africa. Russia and China are providing infrastructure. They're providing all kind of building, providing all kind of things for Africa. The U.S. needs to make an effort, right? Unobligated infrastructure. We just need to not just give them money, but help them to self-govern. That's the deal. We're giving billions with a B to Ukraine in the way of weapons. We can't give millions to Africa. I don't get this. Billions we're giving for basically consumables, for ammunition, for things that we have to constantly give and give and give and give. Why are we doing that? It's to prevent Russia from. Okay, so it's all about Europe. Again, it's funny how people sit there and say we're too European centric, but yet we're giving billions to a European country. So this type of stuff just I don't quite understand. But again, people are smarter than me on this. So China's forming an alliance, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Alliance composed of countries have oil production and exporting capabilities. I'm telling you that this is my prediction, Saudi Arabia will become part of the SCO. Will. Now, it may take 6 months, but I think once they start talking to Iran, start talking about all this stuff, and all of a sudden they realize, well, OPEC is kind of falling asunder here, but we can maybe get exporting stuff with China. Use it with that. If the Chinese help these countries through security and other assistance, it can mean great harm to the U.S. and their allies. Think about the situation with Iran right now. I don't know where they are in relationship to their nuclear weapon manufacturing, but we are not their friend, but we are Saudi's friend, supposedly. So now what do we do? Now Saudi is going to be having diplomatic relations with Iran. So anything we share with Saudi Arabia, they're probably going to share with Iran. So now we have an issue with that. Basically, NATO and ASEAN. I want you to look that up. I mean, if you haven't heard of this, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. I mean, ASEAN. I don't know if the thing is, the sad part about it is it exists, but I don't know how strong it is at this point. This was our way of doing a Far East NATO. Is basically what it was all about. But I don't know what will happen with that. If the U.S. can't provide security and assistance, it can mean curtains for our national security, right? So that's it with that. And now what we need to do is sit back and take a look at where we are. So basically, we're here within this area, right? And look where China is in relationship to this. China's right here. This is China, right? You have India here, and then you have Iran. So what's next to Iran? What's next to Iran? Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country in the SCO. Iran wants to be a country in the SCO. Pakistan, country in the SCO. India, country in the SCO. So you have all these different, look at this. That's the entire Southwest Asia and into Iran. I mean, SCO is doing a lot of areas here. Some of the stands are in there. Kazakhstan, I think, is in there. I mean, so there's a lot of different countries, and basically what's happening is they want control of this entire region, all of it, all of it, and this is only a matter of time before they actually get it. So I think that's pretty important also. So this is what we're talking about. Now let's talk about the SCO, right? So this is, as we went here before, this is the SCO, right? And we talked about this. Let's talk about countries involved: India, Pakistan, Iran, Mongolia, Afghanistan, Belarus. These are countries that they call observer nations, but basically what's happening is they're trying to get more and more in here, right? 6 dialogue partners. And some of these are enemies. Azerbaijan, Armenia, so countries included China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Iran, going to be in there. They're originally formed as the Shanghai Five, right? China, Russia, these 5 countries, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uzbekistan, 6. So the Shanghai Five. Okay, so that was 5 countries in China, right? So all of a sudden added Uzbekistan in 2001. So originally it was China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. So that was the Shanghai Five. So now all of a sudden you're talking about population about 1.5 billion. That's just China. So I mean, you're talking about these areas, right? Afghanistan, Belarus, Afghanistan, lots and lots and lots of raw materials here. Lots of raw materials. So, you can talk about the different background, we're talking, China wants stability in their realm. Afghanistan could lead to a lot of regional stability, so they want to kind of do that. I mean, it's interesting how they want to battle 3 evils: terrorism, separatism, and extremism. And I've talked about this before. So this is, these are the finances. China wants to form a bank, a bank to consolidate funds from all the SCO countries. Think about this for a second. China wants to own the financials of countries that, like this country, India, Pakistan, Iran, Mongolia. I mean, all these different countries. Turkey. I mean, this is a NATO member. Turkey's a NATO member. So all of a sudden, what? So that's what I'm talking about. So basically, what's happening is that we have the ability to do the things we need to do to be able to make this more secure. And and what does that mean? That means we have to present a good, solid front to be able to go in and do what we need to do. And I get it why we're giving billions of dollars to Ukraine. I get this. I understand this. But think about the alliances you could build with $40 billion, or how many $1 billion we're giving to Iran, basically, or to Iran, to Ukraine. I mean, think about that. That is a lot of money. And we could do a lot of good with that money, a lot of good with that money. I realize we're trying to keep Russia at bay. The sanctions aren't working. But what's happening is Russia has the ability to go to the SCO and get what they need to be able to keep on going. I mean, so what are we really doing? All we're doing is building stronger and stronger and stronger this SCO. Yeah, we're throwing sanctions at everybody, but the bottom line is this, is India doing that? Is Pakistan doing that? Is Iran doing that? No, Iran doesn't care about the sanctions. Mongolia, Afghanistan, Belarus doesn't care. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Turkey, Sri Lanka, all these countries that want to be involved in the SCO. Do you really think they're putting sanctions against Russia and China? Or against Russia? Doubtful. Very, very doubtful. So that's basically what this whole program was about, is to talk about, hey, look, you have Iran who wants to be a member of the SCO. My prediction, do it on the show, is that Saudi Arabia is going to want to be part of the SCO. They're making this diplomatic relationship with Iran, and you don't think that China, as a mediator, didn't bring up something with the SCO, with both of them in there? So this is something that is really, really important with that area. So I think that if we're going to understand a worldview, then we have to understand the world, not just what's going on with the United States. I get it. You got to have, you want to have local news. You want to have, I get it. Go ahead, see your local news, see your local weather, all that stuff. That's nicey. But the bottom line is that this local, the global aspect will affect local aspect. Global will affect local. That has always been that way and will always be that way. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and leave you with another worldview in the can, so to speak. And we will see you next time on the worldview, where we here take a look at the world view, not local, world view, and how it affects us here in the United States and you in your neighborhood. Have a great week. Take care. Stay healthy.